Hey, so I'm going to talk about something that's been on my mind recently, and it's on my mind right now as I'm recording this, because I'm recording this while doing this thing, and this is the idea of um, what has been, it's a movement that has kind of had several names online. Um, the one I've been introduced to is the quantified self movement, and there's also like data hoarding, and I can't remember. Um, there's a there was the name of a book from a guy who worked in Microsoft and did a lot in this field. But what it is essentially life logging, right? So basically tracking every aspect of your life for various reasons, right? Um, the quantified self movement kind of claims that they're doing it to, you know, a lot of it is related to like if you look up online to gain like health insights and improve your life and to do that, those sort of like min-maxing things that you will be able to do supposedly if you get like this really deep knowledge about like when, well, like what time of day is your like your blood pressure high, and what sort of foods consume that you consume will like give you the best health effects and the best moods, what activities you should do, those sorts of things. um, and I find that a bit boring because I don't think that that's a rather productive way to use your data, because I think in general those sorts of extrapolations are things that you don't really need data for. But when you, of course, when someone's interested in data, then it seems like everything that you can do with your data is something that you should do with your data, which really isn't the case. But so that's not really what attracts me about the movement, which I was a bit disappointed because I was interested in like this sort of quantifying my life sort of thing, and I looked into that, and the reason why there are a lot of people doing online doesn't really appeal to me. Um, because I don't when I track my health my data, I don't track like health data or anything, although I could start doing that. I did track calories and stuff, but it's generally not the type of data that I track. So when I track the data about my life, it's generally about um, more qualitative things rather than quantitative things. So things like and I do track things quantitatively, like mood, and the things that I do during the day, like how many hours I read, how many hours I watch TV, how many hours I spend biking, things like that. But a lot of it is also like that, the more quantitative data, things like who I hang out with and sentiment around them. And so, um, this movement kind of really exploded when we have access to like more technologies to be able to log the sort of stuff that is happening in our everyday lives. For example, there's the we had like Google Glass, which didn't really become a thing, but like you have a camera in there, you could always like look back into your memory and figure out what happened when and relive your life. And so that's something that kind of interests me, that the kind of aspect of it that I was drawn to is that aspect of just being able to traverse your entire past and know everything about yourself. And if you know enough about your past, you can use that to create models to predict your future. And so you can basically live in both the past and the future at the same time, almost like sort of transcending everything. And so, in relation to this, I've been reading a book recently. The title escapes me, but it is about the guy that I mentioned, who worked at Microsoft, and it's interesting because when I think of this stuff, I think of, a lot of, like, I don't know about other generations, but I know at least in my generation that a good chunk of our life is spent online. If not online, then on a phone, right? Um, or some sort of device. And the interesting thing is that every time you use that device, it's always keeping data. So where before in like the 70s, right? Most of the time, if you want to learn something, you read a book or you look through those cards at the library, and there's no data that's inherently being checked when you do that. And if you want to get a hold of a friend, you make a phone call or you go over to their house and knock on the door, write a letter. Those things, if you want to, you have to like journal about them, or you have to keep track of the letter if you want that recorded. But nowadays, there's even if you're not like online friends with people, all of your communications, your texts, your SMS, your DMs are stored on online servers, and generally those are not deleted; those are safe there. And so now it's becoming increasingly more possible to just look back on all your past conversations that you've ever had with a lot of your friends. Or, I mean, you'd be surprised about how much you can figure out just by old text conversations. And so that's a big aspect I see of it in my generation. But the guy who wrote this book, he was born in like the 30s, I believe, and so he was rather quite old when he started doing this, and he started this project in the early 2000s too. So the technology, like the social revolution of the internet, really wasn't where it is today of social media. So he was doing it completely differently than how we would imagine it today, and it was a lot more difficult, which is really interesting because he's sort of a pioneer in that way, sort of that he's in the way that he did it. But so the way that he decided to go about the quantitative self, the quantified self, is that he just kind of scanned and upload every document relating to his life, and also every a screenshot like of every web page he's ever been on, and save this to like this massive database, right? And so again, he did a lot of data that I would find kind of pointless to see. I mean, I don't really see the point of screenshotting everything like you've ever seen, like every website you've interacted with, every piece of mail he's ever interacted with. I think that data is rather useless, because what are you going to extrapolate from that besides like some really, really, if you want to like try to devise a really deep model of like finding out what has entered your mind psychologically, like the things that you read. But beyond that, I don't really see any purpose in doing such a deep dive in things that you have encountered. Like I see more value in like just having the link to the web page, or maybe just like the title of the web page and the time you accessed it. I don't really see any point in what was on the web page being logged so intimately, because so yeah, he would just scan everything. I haven't finished the book yet, so I'm not quite sure what else he ended up doing. But so that's what I'm doing now. I'm scanning everything basically everything I've ever written. I'm scanning into my own sort of online database. But what makes this more interesting than I believe his research project is that I grew up on the internet quite literally. So I can access all of my old accounts and like accounts that I have when I was like 8 years ago, and all of that information is still online, and I can access it and I can download it into some sort of readable file, HTML, XML, those sorts of things, and then I can just work with that data to make a comprehensive history of a part of my life that I guess most people would forget about. I mean, you ask most people about what they were doing in middle school. Some people remember some things. A lot of people I found that actually will not remember anything at all from their middle school years. But for me, I not only I kept a short journal, so I have all of that. And of course, other people keep journals as well, but there's a difference that I'll get to in regards to how I'm doing this whole journaling thing, is that having downloaded this data, I can do so many different things with it. And a lot of people come to me, or like I come to them and I show them all of the insights I've learned in my life. This is mainly relating to like I tracked every hour of my day. Did this project for about 3 years, and I was like, tell me any day and I can tell you exactly what I was doing. And they thought that was like really insane, like must have taken so much work. But I just did it as the day went on. But as I've continued in this, quantified self sort of thing, I've realized that I didn't even need to do that. That I could probably do that with unintentionally having my data been tracked throughout the years. I could probably make some sort of spreadsheet displaying what I was doing for most days of the year in 8th grade, for example, just for because I mean so much of that is online. and I have like DMs with friends. And using, like I mentioned before, you can extrapolate so much with DMs from that you have with people, because not only do you, I mean, you get reference to who you're talking to at a certain time, but you also get reference to what was on your mind at a certain time. And generally, when you talk with people, you talk about things going on in your life, and so that can often click memories, like, oh yeah, that was the week that that one thing happened, right? And if you talk to people online chronically, like I did, then you can have a lot of information to access about what was going on at any given point in your life, as long as you have that information. So that's why I think a lot of people underestimate how much can actually be figured out from their lives if they really applied themselves in trying to figure that out. And so that's essentially what I would imagine that this new wave of this life logging is that it's, you're no longer logging your life as they did, like this guy did his research project in the early 2000s. Your life is already logged. Now, the next step is to assemble it. And this is honestly the biggest, one of the biggest aspects of modern data science, is that we have so much, like an unlimited amount of data. We just, how do we wrangle this data and how do we make it useful, right? And I mean, it's like a treasure box. Like, there's so many different things you can do with it, but you have to figure out what are the best things and the best uses for this data and the best things to extrapolate, because you can extrapolate all sorts of things that you want. But some things, it might not be very useful to use data extrapolation to reach that conclusion. Like I said, you can always just think about, well, when do I feel good? Like when I eat, like I don't need data analysis to tell you that when I eat, like, McDonald's, I don't feel good afterwards, right? I mean, it's quite simple. But so what I'm doing now in relation to that is scanning all of my old journals. And I mean, that might seem kind of pointless because I already have all my old journals. I mean, initially, the only reason was so that I can, if I need to read my journals, I can do it anywhere. I don't have to lug all of my journals around. And that was the one simple reason. And if, like eventually they'll probably get destroyed someday in some water accident, which will devastate me, but I'll have them all uploaded. But in starting to do this, I realized that there's an even greater use of this information, and it is that with the help of optical character recognition, or OCR, you can essentially have the program read this handwritten text and turn it into like a readable text file, which is like a searchable PDF, a searchable text file, so that the journals now become online data that you can use. And then you can run a swath of analysis on them. You can run sentiment analysis, like when am I feeling good? You could probably predict the mood based off the journal entries. You can see what you were doing, like any time of day, whenever you journaled. One thing that I'm interested in is the people who are in my life, and when is someone on my mind the most. And I can look in my journals and they have this many mentions, right? Not in just my journals, but also my my direct messages as well. And the amount of information that will be able to be uncovered by running that sort of a software through all of these image files of my journals is really going to be incredible. Just the amount that I'll be able to see from that. So that's one of the main things that I'm going to be doing with my quantified self project. And beyond that, what else in my project I'd like to be doing? That's really just something that came, like I told you, I began this project before I had the thought of doing that. So that's only like a small piece of it. Really it's just like a small piece of it, but a really fascinating piece that I can work with. But the main concept behind this is I had this image. I knew, right, that I had all of this data. I had this data in all these different places about my life, and I really just want to tell a cohesive life story. Because I can write a life story, right? But no matter how much I write, it's never going to be cohesive as going into my journal entries and seeing, oh, this is what I wrote, this is what happened that day, or going to a direct message and be like, this is how I felt when I vented to a friend about this. It's never going to be as intimate as that. So I managed this sort of online timeline. So like this website where I can go to any day in my life, and it will be able to tell me, it will like essentially I'll have all of these documents tagged onto this database, and each will be tagged with a date. And so I'll be able to go to any day, and it will show me all of the pieces, the data points I have about that day. So I will have journal entries. It'll show me all the text messages, not just online DMs. I also have my text messages saved, text messages from that day, and with all that information, you tell a really, really cohesive story, not just about that day, but like that week, and you can build up so much more that has happened, and nothing will really be lost to the waves of time anymore if you have that. So that was, and I mean, it's so all the different aspects of it are, I have journal entries, I have Google Photos, I have those direct messages, I have text messages, all the posts that I've made online as well. Those are things I have. And I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Google also tracks your activity of every time you search something, every time you watch a YouTube video, and I believe it also, if you have it on your phone, it also says every time you use a certain app. That one's less reliable, is what I've seen. But often it does say, like, at this time you use this app on your phone. You open like Snapchat or whatever. And so with that, just like all of that parallel to each other, I really could be able to figure out what I am doing on any particular hour of any particular day in my past, even if I didn't record it. So if you're not familiar, the Hourly Tracker Project is something that I discovered on Reddit about 2018 or something. I believe the first one goes back to like 2016. But it's essentially the idea of like dividing your time into activities like hanging out with friends, reading books, going outside, those sorts of things, working, and then making a spreadsheet that uses colors for each of those activities to visualize it, and tracking that every hour for every day for an entire year. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because you only have to do like, I mean, really, you're sleeping half the day. Most of your day is going to be at work or school, so there's only really a few other hours where you have to think back, like, oh, what was I doing that day? Or like at the end of the day, like, what was I doing during this hour? So that's really not that difficult. But I was doing that for a while until it kind of overwhelmed me and I couldn't keep up with it. But yeah, it would be able to use all of the data that is just stored on the web automatically about you into, create something like that, or create like that sort of narrative. And what has been really helpful is that the EU has published, they started rolling out really strict privacy laws for internet companies. So now any company, because it's kind of internet's international thing, right? If you request your data, they kind of have to give it to you, at least in the EU, right? And I think California or something like that too. But because of this, they kind of just like, okay, no, every online company that stores your data kind of has to have like a way that they're going to give it back to you. So now they just have it open. If you send in a request, they'll give it to you like within 30 days. Some ones I've done that for, I've done that with Netflix. So I see everything I've watched on Netflix in the past 5 years. Same with Spotify. Spotify's, they only give you the past year, but if you ask with like a certain phrase, they'll give you your lifetime of data of every song you've ever listened to on your Spotify account. So just the raw amount of data that you can get about one person is just really incredible. And so there's sort of this idea of transcendence, of if you know everything about your past, can you predict your future based on it? And the idea is that with this Hourly Tracker project, I already have all these data points because I've done it for like 3 years. Theoretically, I could create a software that analyzes all of this data that I'm uploading during the period that I have my Hourly Tracker project, and then uses the Hourly Tracker as sort of the testing infrastructure to test against. So it predicts which activity I'm doing of each hour of every day based on the large like amounts of data that I have, like all my the text of my journal entries, my location data, all these sorts of things, and then it sort of predicts what I was doing during this time, like this hour of this day, based on all of that. And of course, the prediction is going to be wrong, but I will be able to you use a model to like self-correct it based off of the quote-unquote answers. And I have those because I did this. I did the hourly tracker project. So theoretically, I'd be able to track everything that happened in my past, and as it's happening, I don't even need to do anything else. The project will be able to do it for me. The software will be able to do the project for me. But like when I talk about transcendence, is that you can this sort of idea of that you don't you're not bound by the laws of time anymore. Like you could create a software that could predict what you're doing on a certain day of the week based on what you've done before. And so it's kind of becoming superhuman in a sort of way, is that using this technology, you can know bounds more about yourself than anyone else, can know about you. And with all of that knowledge, what can you do? You can do a lot of pretty interesting, crazy things. And especially the main reason, so I'm studying computer science at university, and the technology really isn't there yet for a lot of things that we see in like sci-fi stuff, like uploading your brain into a vault or something. Definitely it's not even close to there. Or like artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence. We're still long ways out from those sorts of things. But if you have so much data about a person, theoretically you can just create that person in the online space to like rebuild them. It's almost like cloning you, using all this data that you have. So given all my journal entries and all, like I have like years and hundreds of pages of, thousands really, of journal entries, dreams, thoughts, everything I've ever written down, I could create some sort of thing that thinks like I do, or at least looks like it thinks like I do, like run all of this the semantic text through it, so it can essentially be like a really complicated chatbot that talks in just a way or has ideas just like I do. And we're pretty close there with chatbots. Their chatbots can get pretty complicated, although those aren't like really commercially available ones. So they're like hidden in a vault at Google or something. Can't really get commercially available ones that can do something like that. But then you also see things like deep fakes, or I don't know what that's called, but they have like, you have an image of someone, like of someone's face, and you can have it like talk and do things just based off how it knows like human faces work. And then so you can have deep fakes, so people can do whatever or make it look like they're saying whatever you want them to say, right? And then they also have audio fakes, where if you talk, they do this a lot with YouTubers and politicians because they have lots and lots of data of them talking, but you can replicate their speech patterns, and so have a program that talks as if they do. And if you combine all of these things, then you can essentially create an online version of yourself that talks like you do, sounds like you do, looks like you do. And they already have Twitter. Most of Twitter is full of bots, right? So then you could even have it like continue to populate the internet with things like you do, right? And I definitely think in the future that the internet is mostly gonna, like most online content creation is going to be run by bots. I've seen YouTube video. Maybe not bots like are running the accounts, but a person's running accounts and they're making a bot make videos. I have seen YouTube videos of like YouTubers that are like that are actually like, like a deep faked everything. And if it didn't tell me the YouTube channel, it would have taken me about a minute for me to notice. I would have eventually noticed like, oh yeah, the audio doesn't sound right and this story is kind of whack. But besides that, it was like really solid. And these aren't like state of the art things too. These are just like people online doing this. So imagine in the future when like a company is able to, like, we can make them we can make a YouTube video. You just give us this amount of footage of you talking, and these are the topics you want to talk about, and you can, we'll analyze algorithms, or we use algorithms to analyze what people want to watch, and then we'll make YouTube videos for you. And I think that's definitely going to be a thing in the future. I mean, they've already have articles written by by bots. I believe what is it? So the DALL-E, it's called the DALL-E. The DALL-E 2. That's what it is. Where you tell it to make a picture or something, and it makes a picture that looks really remarkably human from it. But it also, I believe, is parts of that transformer infrastructure has been used to create news articles or journal articles. They're completely written by an AI, and we probably don't even realize how much of that is the case nowadays. And so that's definitely going to be a really, really big thing. So by having all this data about myself, I'll be ahead of the curve. So when the technology does come up, it definitely, I believe, like the next 15 years, I say, this automated content creation will be really, really start to take off, I'd say. If you look at it the past 2 years, you see all of the stuff with deepfakes that has just been rapidly improving online. So I'll be ahead of the curve when I have all this data about myself, and I'll be able to use that technology to do whatever it is I'd like to do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. My legs kind of stinging right now, so I'm gonna tap out. But yeah, I'll talk more about this. Maybe I'll make a more structured video, but that's all I have to say right now.